Hey guys, it's Dave here. Welcome back to the channel. It's been a little bit of time since my last Rocket Lab video, and I'm excited to be at it. Missed you guys and missed talking about Rocket Lab. It's probably been over a week and a half, just been busy with other things. Sorry about that. But we've had a lot of exciting news lately, and I just wanted to give my thoughts on some of it. Obviously, the successful launch from LC-2 at Wallops was extremely important for the company, very exciting. If you guys were able to go out and watch it live, I'm definitely jealous of you. Still a little far for me to be able to make it anytime soon, but at least it's more in the realm of possibility now than when those launches are way out in New Zealand. Obviously, though, more important than the single launch itself is what this means for the company finally having this LC-2 complex up and running after so many delays. I made a video previously about a lot of the delays we've been having, but basically, when you get down to it, the vast majority is due to NASA. They were working on their own flight termination software and certifying that for Rocket Lab to use, even though Rocket Lab uses their own autonomous flight termination software for New Zealand, which took absolutely forever. And we've been waiting for years, and then finally we had some weather delays that pushed it back into 2023, but here we are finally launching. I really hope this isn't a sign of more red tape and weather-related delays in the future for Wallops. Hopefully we can get things going pretty smoothly. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about why I think this is important and talk about the company. By the way, the stocks had a nice little pop lately. I think this is mostly just to do with macro conditions. We're seeing a lot of those growth names that have been beaten down over the past year or two bounce back quite a bit lately. I don't think the market is really recognizing yet how well Rocket Lab has been performing and executing and growing their revenue. I think what we've seen is a lot of the good companies kind of getting thrown out with the bad during this environment. So you look at some companies, almost no revenue, lots of problems, and their stock has traded very similar to a company like Rocket Lab, which has performed very well and met their guidance, met their expectations. At some point, we're going to see that shift, see those numbers reflect the actual performance of the companies. It's just a bit painful for those of us who are waiting for that day to arrive, but it will one day. I'm very sure about that. So about Wallops, we're looking at about 4 to 6 of the 14 launches planned for this year coming from Wallops already. So that is pretty significant. You're looking at potentially almost half of the launches of the year coming from Wallops. Clearly, this is a very good thing for the business. It allows you to launch from a different complex. 2 launch complexes are always better than 1, they say. But beyond that, what are we looking at? Well, we have a ton of potential launches coming from New Zealand. It's a lot less traffic over there. They own their launch complex themselves. It's a private launch complex, so they can do a lot of things. I believe I heard they have something like 130 potential launch windows they can use from New Zealand, and only something like 10-ish right now from Wallops. Hopefully that can grow in the future, though. It is still important, even though that number is relatively low. It's obviously a lot easier for things like national security payloads by satellites not to have to be shipped outside of the country. You can run into a lot of problems and red tape with that, although it has happened before. We've seen the NRO launch with Rocket Lab out of New Zealand. I think, the Army and a lot of these government contracts would really appreciate being able to launch in country, and then they can say it goes to American jobs and all that kind of thing. It just helps a lot having a presence in the country. And also, I think it makes a lot of sense having a launch complex for Electron right there, extremely close to Neutron's complex. I'm sure there's a lot of synergies the companies can achieve by having both facilities really close to each other, having the teams working together, maybe going back and forth. Makes a lot more sense than having these facilities, way far apart from each other, for sure. Other than that, another factor to consider is that this is bringing a lot of attention, publicity, and press to the company perhaps for the first time really from the American audience. I've always been really surprised at how unknown the company is, considering we don't exactly have a lot of companies launching rockets into space right now, private companies. You'd think everyone would really know about it, but for whatever reason, it really hasn't gotten a lot of attention. Maybe that's partly because they're launching from out in New Zealand, and so, out of sight, out of mind. But with a lot of people seeing the launches now, I think we saw that the first launch out of Wallops got a massive amount of views online. So hopefully that added attention to the company can make more people look at it, realize that this is a bona fide company with great earnings, and we can get some more attention put on it, get some more buyers for the stock, and some more support. Of course, over the long term, I do prefer to have my companies trade on the earnings and not the hype. So I'm not just here looking for lots of people to buy up the stock to the point where the earnings do not justify that stock price. I'm not trying to find some kind of a pump and dump, but I think we can all agree we've seen quite a bit of undervaluation for the company of late. So if we have some new buyers, of course, I wouldn't complain about that. And I'm sure you guys would not as well. The other consideration I was thinking of is, I'm by no means an expert in orbital mechanics and, orbits and things of that nature, but I do believe they can achieve some orbits from this launch site, which would be impossible from New Zealand. I remember reading once that it would have been very hard for them to launch Tropics from New Zealand, which is that contract they got after Astra was unable to deliver for NASA. And we actually just heard recently the next launch out of Wallops will be the first of those two NASA Tropics missions, which will go into space and monitor hurricane season and their weather monitoring satellites. So very high profile mission for the company, and I don't think they would have been able to do it. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think they would have been able to do it from New Zealand. So it's great having that additional capability, providing a wider range for Rocket Lab rockets to support. As well, if you have a lot of satellite manufacturing in the States, it just makes a ton of sense to be able to have these satellites nearby and then launch them without having to incur the additional expense of shipping them across the entire world. There's a big delay, there's costs. I'm sure it's not as simple as putting it in a box and sending it on its way. These are extremely delicate, extremely expensive components that are going into a space. You really have to make sure every step of the way that there's going to be no damage and they're going to work once they arrive and are launched. Now, in terms of reusability, I don't believe we're going to be seeing that from this launch site quite yet. Seems like it would take a while for them to get all the pieces in place to have that ready to go. They obviously need helicopters and pilots over there trained to do the catching. I don't think you're going to have one guy sending them back and forth, depending on which site is launching. And there's probably a lot of other infrastructure that needs to be in place to refurbish these rockets, get them ready to go again. So I don't think we'll see any reusable launches from Wallops this year, but I'm still looking for more information on that one. And I'm sure eventually we will get those reusable launches from both complexes. By the way, I've been having a lot of fun experimenting with various AI tools lately. You might have seen my last video. And I actually created the background image for this YouTube video's thumbnail with an AI text-to-image tool. I'm not sure it quite hit the mark with what I was going for, but I thought it was pretty cool. Let me know what you think of the image. Probably end up going back to the previous thumbnails, but it was fun to play around with. So yeah, those are just some initial thoughts I've had about the launch. Obviously great to see it was a success. Congrats to all you investors out there on the company achieving this milestone. I know I'm very happy about it as well. If you didn't get to see the launch, I think I'll throw in the footage at the end of this video you can watch. I always love watching these launches. Never gets old for me for some reason. I'd love to make it out to a launch one day. I'm sure I will. And let me know down below what your thoughts are about the significance of this new launch site. How big of a deal is it to you? And I'll see you guys next time. Hope you have a great week. Bye for now.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Lift off.
Electrons
Beginning
the pad,
pushover.
saving ground systems.
Stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
And liftoff of Electron from Launch Complex 2, leaving US soil for the first time and on its way to space up and over the Atlantic Ocean. All 9 Rutherford engines on Electron's first stage now propelling the rocket
Stage 1
at more than 700 kilometers an hour. And we are hearing good calls from the teams in Virginia and Rocket Lab Mission Control. A clean ascent for Electron, now nearly a minute into flight. You are looking at
Eco supersonic, floating
56,000
max Q.
pounds of maximum thrust from those stage 1 engines, but soon they'll be throttling down to support that
HV
pass
battery
to the
discharge
maximum aerodynamic pressure point.
Cleared max Q.
There is the call out. Electron has cleared that first milestone and is continuing nominally. The 9 Rutherford engines on the first stage are throttling back up, and all looks nominal for propulsion there. We are now at 1 minute and 32 seconds into flight, with Electron moving at speeds of nearly more than 3,000 kilometers an hour now.
The next major milestone will be those Rutherford engines on the first stage shutting off completely, expected to occur at around T minutes 26 seconds into flight. That will happen just before separation of the first and second stages, which then allows the Rutherford engine on the second stage to fire up and continue with the mission to low Earth orbit. The events are called out from Mission Control as MECO, stage separation, and stage 2 engine ignition. Meanwhile, those 9 Rutherford
15
engines
seconds
are
to MECO.
continuing to propel Electron at more than 6,000 kilometers per hour. 2 minutes and 10 seconds into flight of Virginia is for launch lovers.
MECO confirm.
Stage separation successful.
Stage 2 ignition.
Excellent news there from our launch operators. Electron has had a successful MECO, stage separation, and stage 2 ignition. The next
Stage
milestone
2
will be
propulsion is
separation
nominal.
of the rocket's fairing. We do this to lose unnecessary weight once Electron is through the Earth's atmosphere.
Fairing jettison succeeded.
And as we saw from Electron's onboard camera and heard from Mission Control, the rocket's fairing has successfully separated and fallen away, exposing the Hawkeye 360 satellites to space on their way to low Earth.